We're going to read chapters 13, 14, and 15 today. Penny, no, Mrs. V calls out, dragging Doodle behind her. Penny has scooted out of Mrs. V's front door and is halfway down the ramp from her porch, shouting bye-bye from under her green baseball cap. Butterscotch at home in our backyard would be having a doggy fit if she could see Penny trying to bolt. It's one of those early November days that an artist would love. Red bronze leaves, bright gold sunlight, leftover summer. I don't blame Penny for trying to bolt. Mrs. V scoops her up and brings her back to the house. Go and work, Penny pouts. Not today, honey buns, Mrs. V says firmly as she locks the front door. Penny loves wearing hats and playing dress up. Mom rarely buys fancy church lady hats for herself, but for Penny, she'll sometimes pick out a crazy looking straw hat with bows and ribbons and bring it home. At home, Penny spends a crazy amount of time in front of the hall mirror with a couple of Mom's plastic necklaces hanging down almost to her shoes, a purse on each arm, and a hat tilted sideways on her head. Gotta go to work, she'll say with one hand on her hip. Who has she ever seen dressed like that going to work? Mom asks as we all crack up. She's only 2. I'm not going to be able to afford the kid when she's old enough to go shopping on her own. Dad always says. He snaps every cute pose she makes with his cell phone camera. When Mrs. V sets Penny back down, Penny pokes her lips out, throws Doodle on the floor, and wraps both her legs around her chest. I laugh. I wish I had enough coordination to have attitude. Here, Penny, why don't you just sit down and draw me a picture instead, Mrs. V says, whipping out a box of crayons. Attitude forgotten. Penny grabs a handful and promptly begins to scribble all over the coloring book as well as Mrs. V's table. I wish I could use crayons. I'd draw a rose with a velvety red bloom and a green stem and yellow green leaves coming from it. I can see it so clearly in my mind, but of course, when I put a pencil or crayon in my stupid tight little fingers, all I can manage are squiggly lines, nothing that looks even close to a rose. I want to draw it for Rose. She has rose designs on her notebooks in a book bag. I don't know where her mother finds such cool stuff. Rose's name really fits her. She's pretty and delicate and nice to be around. If she has thorns like real roses do, I'd never noticed. When Penny is busy with her crayons, Mrs. V checks her mail. She opens several envelopes, then gasps with surprise. Guess what, girl? She exclaims. I won a contest. I look at her with interest. Penny continues to scribble, ignoring both of us. I entered an essay contest at the bookstore in the mall, she explains to me. The topic was why fish are important in our world ecology. I point to food on my board and smirk. No, silly. She reaches over and tickles me. I wrote something about oceans and the balance of nature. I don't honestly remember what I said, but I won first prize. A trip for 6 to the new downtown aquarium, all expense paid. Stupendous. I've seen the commercials on television for the aquarium. It's supposed to have sharks and turtles and penguins and a million other sea animals. Go? I asked by pointing on my board. Well, besides me, I don't know who else to take, she says, scratching her head and grinning. I kick my foot strap loose. Me, I want to scream. Instead, I point to myself. Who could I take? Mrs. V teases, looking around the kitchen. I can tell she's trying hard not to laugh. Me, I jab. Well, of course I'll take you, Mellow Yellow, says Mrs. V, smiling. I just think of all the new words we'll gather. I'm going to write down the names of every single fish for you to learn. I slap my head, pretending to be upset. So if I take you and Penny, your mom and dad and me, that's 5. I wonder who else we could take. She scrunches up her face, thinking. I know immediately. Rose could go with us. I spell out her name, Rose, and again, Rosc. Then I hit, please. Your friend Rose from school? I buck and kick with excitement. I think that's a great idea, Melody. I'll ask your parents and her parents, and if she's willing, we'll have a wonderful day. I can't stop kicking my feet. I take several weeks before both mom and dad are off work on a Saturday, but Thanksgiving weekend ends up working out for everybody. I have trouble sleeping the night before. Rose's parents seemed really nice from what I could tell from listening to Mom's end of the conversation. I couldn't believe Rose wanted to come. She wanted to come with me, the kid in the chair. At school, Rose whispered with me about the trip, just like I'd seen other girls do when they have secrets. I felt like a real girl. Now that the Saturday is finally here, we all pile into our SUV early in the morning. Even though the weather has turned pretty chilly, I made sure Mom put a really nice outfit on me, cute jeans and no sweats. Rose hadn't said anything about what I'm wearing, but she keeps cooing over Penny. Your sister's so adorable, Melody, Rose says. I smile and nod. Penny reaches out her chubby little hands and claps. Ooh, see, she says. I think she said my name, Rose exclaims. Your sister is not only cute, she's a genius. As we drive, Rose chatters with my parents and Mrs. V like she's known them all her life. I watch it all silently, thinking, this has to be the best day of my life. When we get to the aquarium, Dad unloads my chair and eases me into it while Mom gets Penny's stroller out and straps her in. Rose pushes Penny as Mom pushes me, so we can be side by side. The place is crowded, I guess because it's a holiday weekend. Nobody pays any attention to me, which is perfect. I can almost forget who I am. Inside, fish tanks go from floor to ceiling. I think of Oli. He might have been happy here. In one tank, sharks swim overhead, just like we're actually looking up from the ocean floor. Okay, so Oli might not have been so happy in that tank. I've never seen so many fish from all over the world, it seems. Fish with spikes and spots, fish with markings so beautiful they look painted. Penny slaps at the glass whenever a fish comes close. Fishies, more fishies. Mrs. V has promised write down names of species and take pictures so I can remember. When we get back home, Mom and Dad whisper together like teenagers. I've never seen them so relaxed. We stop in front of every tank. I love the jellyfish, which remind me of streams so shiny, of shiny cloth, and lionfish, which really look like little swimming lions. At the seahorse tank, Rose observes that their heads point backward. She seems to be having a great time. Then, from around the corner, came the two people I'd least want to run into, Molly and Claire. They're with their Girl Scout troop. They're fake bumping into each other, not paying much attention to the other leader, who is telling them about the percentage of salt found in ocean water. Molly and Claire dress exactly alike in jeans, long sleeve t-shirts, and scout vests. Look at Rose with surprise. Hey, Rose, you're here with your mom? Claire asks. No, Rose says, evasively walking away from us and toward them. Your dad? Molly asks, looking at me like I smell bad. And she's acting like my parents are invisible. I'm here with Melody and her family, Rose mumbles. On purpose? Claire shrieks. Both she and Molly start laughing loudly. It's not so bad, Rose says quietly, but I heard her. Mom starts to say something to the girls, but Dad takes her arm. They're children, he tells her. Let them work it out themselves. Mom has those daggers in her eyes, the sharp points she shoots at people who say dumb things about me, but she stays quiet. Her fists are balled. Mrs. V, however, isn't going to let anybody stop her. From her almost 6-foot height, she towers over Molly and Claire. You, girl with the braces on her teeth. Claire looks up at her, stunned. Yes, ma'am. Claire has sense enough to say, why do you think your parents spent good money getting you braces? Huh? Claire looks confused. Molly has quietly disappeared into her scout troop. Your teeth were imperfect, so your parents got you braces. One day you'll thank them when you get a date for the prom, Mrs. V roars. The whole scout troop, plus a few other visitors to the aquarium, stop to listen to her. What do my teeth have to do with anything? Claire asks, looking around nervously. Some people get braces on their teeth. Some people get braces on their legs. For others, braces don't work, so they need wheelchairs and walkers and such. You're just a lucky girl that you only had messed up teeth. Remember that. Yes, ma'am, Claire says again. Then she scurries off to join her friends. Rose walks back to us, a little embarrassed, I think. Claire can be clueless, she whispers to me. You think? After a few more tanks, Penny gets tired and starts to whine, so we leave the aquarium before we even get to see the penguins. We take Rose home, and she thanks us properly and says that she had a really good time. But did she? Chapter 14. The Monday following Thanksgiving break, Catherine and I roll into Miss Gordon's language arts class a few minutes before the bell. It doesn't look like I'll ever find out what Rose really thought about the trip to the aquarium because she clearly has more exciting things on her mind. Everyone is huddled around her desk. Awesome. I love that color. I didn't know they came in lime green. Oh man, that's what's up. How many songs have you downloaded so far? What's your new email address? You got IM? Videos. That's so tight. I wish my mom would get me a laptop like that. I roll closer. Rose is showing off a brand new laptop computer. I can get on the internet and find stuff for school and type up all my homework. She's telling a group around her. I've already uploaded pictures of my dog and I've got my own MySpace page. I just shake my head as Catherine takes me back to my usual place in the back of the room, a laptop. I'm still pointing to words and phrases that Mrs. V and my mother have taped to a board that's strapped to my wheelchair, and Rose has the internet. I guess that means the whole universe at her fingertips. I close my eyes, trying not to cry, dreaming of the perfect melody made computer. First of all, it would talk. Oh, yes. People would have to tell me to shut up, and it would have room to store all my words, not just the most common ones that have gotten pasted on my dumb plastic board. It would have big keys so my thumbs could push the right buttons and it would connect to my wheelchair. It would not have to be lime green. I open my eyes with a start. Such a thing has to exist, right? Or something like it, maybe. I grab Catherine's arm and point to Rose's computer. Me too. I punch on my board. I do it several times. You want a computer like Rose's? Catherine glances over at Rose's laptop. It really is nice. Even I don't have one as cool as hers. No, I point. Wait, you don't want a computer? Catherine sounds confused. I have learned to be patient with people. Once again, I point to Rose's computer and then to the words me too. I search all over my communication board and the words better, nicer, cooler just aren't there. So I point to good, then to the alphabet strip and jab at the letters E and R, gooder. I sound like a doofus. Oh, Catherine finally says, you want a better computer than Rose's. Yes, I pounded on the board. Then I point to for and me. I get it, Catherine cried. You want something specially designed for you. That's just plain brilliant, Melody. I spell out DUH and we laugh. Miss Gordon starts class then, reminding everyone about due dates for the biography project. Tomorrow, she announces, class will meet in the media center so that you can make final choices about the person you will write about. And next week, we will begin making outlines of your life stories. Any questions? Connor, always the class clown, raises his hand. I found out the guy who invented the flush toilet was named Thomas Crapper. Can I do my report on him? Kids crack up. Rodney laughs so hard his whole face turned red. Miss Gordon shushes Rodney and the others. Sorry, Connor. I get this request every year. The flush toilet was invented in 1596 by John Harrington. No funny name. Do you still want to research him? Connor looks deflated. Nah, I guess I'll just stay with the folks who started McDonald's. If I've got to spend a lot of time looking up stuff, burgers are better than toilets. Rodney tries to burst out laughing again, but Miss Gordon silences him with a look. Who will you choose to write about? Catherine asked me as Miss Gordon walks around the class talking to students about their projects. I think for only a minute. Stephen Hawking's, I spell out. I want to know how he does ordinary stuff like eating and drinking. After all, he's a grown man. Does his wife put him on the toilet? He has kids. How does he manage to be a dad? And I want to know about his talking devices, the super cool computers that help him talk and do really hard math problems like finding black holes in space. I tap out the question for Catherine. Computer for me? I have no idea, she replies. Let's check it out. Chapter 15. The next morning, we get the first snowfall of the season. Big, fat flakes fall outside the windows of room H5. Freddie zooms over and touches the window. Nice, he says. Mrs. Shannon rolls all of us closer so we can watch the snow accumulate on the grass and trees. It's really pretty. Even Jill seems to relax. We gonna play in the snow? Asked Maria. No, Maria, it's too cold to play outside, but guess what? It's getting close to Christmas. Maria cheers. I've heard it's some sort of tradition around here to decorate this old styrofoam snowman. Mrs. Shannon continues. She makes a face like she pulls Sydney's head out of his box. Maria starts to hug it, but Mrs. Shannon stops her and says, I believe the smell of fresh pine trees at holiday time and real candy canes and popcorn garland. Tomorrow I'm bringing in a real tree and we're going to make it beautiful. Freddie and Carl slap palms. Maria looks disappointed for a moment, but she seems to forget about the snowman. And as Mrs. Shannon gives everyone a soft piece of chocolate candy, she wisely stuffs Sydney back into his box. While Mrs. Shannon shows the rest of the class how to make paper snowflakes, Catherine and I sit together in the front of the one clunky classroom computer and do web searches on communication devices. It's so slow. Sometimes it gets jammed up and stalls and we have to reboot it and start all over. Room H5 always gets the big old leftover computers that the other classrooms no longer want. Catherine and I research all kinds of electronic talking and communication devices that have been designed for people like me. Lots of them seem as clunky and awkward as our room computer. Some look really complicated. All of them are expensive, crazy expensive. Some of the websites don't even list prices. Like they're afraid to specify how much the thing costs. The devices that use standard computer keyboards wouldn't work. I have no way to hit the individual keys. I would need something that would work with just my thumbs. We find adapted computers, talking boards that speak the words, push button systems, and even devices that work with blinks or head nods. Finally, we find something called a MediTalker that looks like a possibility. It has space is big enough for my thumbs to get into and millions of words and phrases built into it. I watch an online video of a boy about my age using one, and even though he clearly has no voice of his own, this little box lets him tell all the details of his recent birthday party. I get so excited that my legs start kicking and my arms start flailing, and I look like some kind of crazy human helicopter. Catherine prints out the information, tucks it into my book bag that's attached to the back of my chair. Good luck, Melody, she whispers as she leaves for the day. When I get off the bus after school, Mrs. V is waiting for me as usual. I almost twist out of my seat, trying to point to my bag to let her know I have something important in it. Hold your horses, Mrs. V says. Since when are you excited to do homework? What's got you all in a tizzy today? I just grin and kick. After my snack of caramel candy and tuna melt, and after Penny, who has just gotten up from her nap, eats her applesauce, Mrs. V finally pulls the papers out of my bag. Well, this is exactly what you need, Mrs. V says, slapping the printouts onto the table after reading them. No wonder you're all fired up. Yes, 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 I point, and then I point to the individual words. Talk to mom and dad. Talk, talk, talk. I'll do just that, just as soon as they get home from work, Melody, Mrs. V promises. I can hardly wait. While Penny watches Cookie Monster gobble carrots instead of cookies on Sesame Street, I dream of talking, talking, talking. When mom picks us up, Mrs. V, true to her word, not only shows mom the printouts, but even has her computer all ready to set up the webpage where the MediTalker is advertised and sold. Penny sits on mom's lap and keeps pushing computer keys, messing up the display, which is getting on my nerves. But mom watches the video that shows people actually talking and cracking jokes and even going to college by using that machine. Mrs. V explains to mom how this is exactly right for me, and mom, instead of being practical and sensible and thrifty like she usually is, seems to agree. Looks like insurance will cover about half the cost, she muses as she navigates the website. Let me talk to Chuck. This is long overdue. Tonight? I asked for my board. Yep, tonight, mom says, giving me a squeeze, but nothing happens right away in my world. Mom fills out the online application for the machine the next day and sends it in. I wait. Then we have to ask my doctor to fax in a prescription. I've heard a prescription for antibiotics, but for machines, that seems crazy. Who'd ever want this machine unless they needed it? I wait. Next, we have to get approval from our insurance company. More paperwork and phone calls, more questions and answers. I wait. A parental financial statement has to be turned in. You got to be kidding. Why do they make it so complicated? I wait. The medical form is missing one signature and has to be resubmitted. I wait. One last approval form from a school official has to be turned in. I wait. I realize I've been waiting for this thing my whole life. Finally, 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 on the Wednesday before Christmas, the MediTalker arrives. I need no other gifts. When I get home from school, Mrs. V tells me that she hurried to my house when she saw the UPS truck pulling up our driveway. She signed for the package and brought it to her house for safekeeping. The huge brown box sits there taped and secure, and it's addressed to me. I wiggle and squeal and insist we open it right away. I can feel one of my tornadoes coming in. Spastic City, here I come. Calm down, mellow yellow, Mrs. V says, placing a hand on my shoulder, but I can't relax. Open, 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 I tap. Well, your mom knew you'd be impatient, Mrs. V says. So when I called to tell her that it arrived, she told me it was okay for us to open it. I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack watching Mrs. V carefully open the edges of the box. She lets me pull at the brown paper inside. Then under about a mile of bubble wrap, there it is, the MediTalker, smaller than I expected. It's only the size of my wheelchair tray, but it's sleek and shiny and cool to the touch. It's like a butterfly ready to unfold its wings. Boy, oh boy, I can't wait to try it. Mrs. V plugs it into the wall outlet to charge the battery, then pulls out the huge booklet of directions. Whoa, she says, this will take a year to read and understand. She flops down on a soft, easy chair with Penny on her lap and begins to read. And I begin to wait and wait and wait. Finally, when I just know I'm going to explode, I wheel over to the table where the MediTalker sits. I've seen the kids at school play video games they've never seen before, and I've seen them program their phones and computers without touching a book of instructions. So I take my right thumb and I push on the button. The board whirs and glows, and then welcome message appears on the screen. I push another button and a voice that sounds like an Englishman with a really bad head cold blurts out, "Welcome to MediTalker." Mrs. V jumps up from the couch. I shriek with joy. "It looks like you're way ahead of me, Melody. Not that I'm surprised." She sets Penny down. "Now let's see what this machine can do." I feel like Christopher Columbus bumping into America. It had been there all the time, but he was the first one from his world to find it. I wonder if his heart had beat as fast as mine is. We quickly discover that the MediTalker has more than a dozen levels, all easily reached with just one button. So on level 1, we program in the names of everyone I know. My name, all the members of my family, kids and teachers at school, my doctors, the neighbors, my parents, friends, and of course, Mrs. V. On the second level, she insists we add all the vocabulary words we've been collecting on our multicolored 3x5-inch flashcards. Type, save, type, save. Mrs. V's fingers fly as she keeps adding words for me. Lots of our vocabulary words are already in the machine's memory, but she gives me more, more, more. Nouns, verbs, adverbs, and adjectives, thousands of them, as well as cool sentence makers. That is located on another level. We can prepare hundreds of phrases and sentences and get them with just a touch. Have you heard their latest song? That's what's up. How did you do on the spelling test? Ordinary words, normal conversation. I've never had that. Awesome. Another level is for numbers and even computation. I'll be able to do math now. Maybe I won't tell the teachers about that one. And there's a level full of corny jokes and silly sayings with room left for us to add more. Another level plays music. I can connect that device to a computer and download any song I want. I can't wait to search iTunes. Maybe I can ask Rose which songs are hot. Rose, I can actually talk to Rose now. We stopped programming for a while. Penny needs to be changed and kept occupied, but I'm much too excited to rest. So after Mrs. V gets Penny set up with her dollhouse at the foot of the couch, we add more words and phrases. Finally, she stops typing and says, "Would you like to try it out?" The room is absolutely quiet. I stroke the edge of the machine softly, then push two buttons. "Thanks, Mrs. V," the computer's voice says. She blinks real fast. I do too. She reaches for a tissue. We both need it. Mrs. V tucks the tissue into her pocket, then begins reading again from the instruction manual. "Hey, listen to this," she says. "With that connector cord, you can also save longer things you want to write, like stories, poems on the computer." "Wow," the machine says. Mrs. V nods in agreement. "This is going to be fun, but you're going to need a lot of practice to make it say what you want, kid." She's right. Many levels have been left blank for users to input their own information, words, sentences, phone numbers, even pictures. Information can be typed directly into the machine or it can be downloaded from a computer. It's a little overwhelming. "We can design this to fit you, Melody," Mrs. V tells me. "This will be your world. So let's take our time and make it exactly what you need." I am so happy. I almost feel like hugging the machine, but that would look silly. Instead, I name it. That's probably pretty dumb, but sometimes it's good to have something that nobody else knows but you. I'm not going to type the name into the machine because it's personal, but in my mind, I'm going to call the MediTalker Elvira, like the song I like. Yep, my heart's on fire for Elvira. While Mrs. V plays with Penny for a while, I continue to explore what Elvira can do. One of the first changes I want to make is hello message and the voice that speaks it. The computer pronounced greeting sounds really fake, but the machine offers several female voices to choose from, as well as a bunch of different languages. I picked the voice called Trish. She actually sounds like a girl, not a grown up. I wouldn't mind sounding like her if I could talk. "Bienvenue," Trish says in French. I know that means welcome. I push the button for German. She says, "Willkommen." I even find something that sounds like "Fu Ying" when I touch the button for Chinese. I stop for a minute and stare at the board. It has never occurred to me before there are kids like me in Germany and China and France who need a machine to help them talk. Mrs. V returns to me and helps me change the original welcome message from the very mechanical sounding "Welcome to MediTalker," to Trisha's voice saying, "Hi, I'm Melody. Talk to me." I can't wait to take it to school and introduce my new computer to everybody there. I wonder what Rose will say. By now, both Mom and Dad have called to check on how we're doing, how much progress we've made. They're both anxious to get it here and see the device for themselves. So while we wait, Mrs. V suggests that we just keep programming it, adding more and more. She thinks I should practice using it for a couple of weeks before taking it to school. I don't really want to wait, but I have to agree with her that this is going to take some time. I want to be able to use the system to talk like ordinary kids, sort of. So we return to words. I want to input thousands of them: notebook, marker, homework, assignment, test, positive, negative, fingernail, nail polish, outfit, backpack, purse, scared, excited, purple. Then we type some more phrases, hundreds of them. To the mall, from a distance, in the middle of, as a result, the reason why. Lastly, we get to some sentences, dozens of them. What time is it? What's up with that? You crack me up. I'm so excited before the doorbell rings. When dad and mom come in to pick us up, dad is ready with his camcorder. His hands are shaking a little. Show us how it works, honey, he says. I can't believe dad's making a video of me saying my first words. It's almost like when he filmed Penny's first words. Well, not really. I type very carefully and push the button to make the machine speak. Hi, dad. Hi, mom. I am so happy. Mom gets all teary-eyed and her nose gets red. She's looking at me all soft and gooey. When I think about it, I realize I have never ever said any words directly to my parents. So I push a couple of buttons and the machine speaks the words I've never been able to say. I love you. Mom completely loses it. She bubbles up with tears and grabs dad. I think he might be sniffing back a couple of tears himself, but he has recorded it all. Okay, we're going to go ahead and stop there.